The first scream cut through the galactic medical relay like static in a hymn. It wasn't supposed to reach him. But Kenji Tanaka heard it anyway. He sat alone inside a forgotten tea house on Asteroid 9M, where dust drifted lazily between flickering lanterns, and time moved as slowly as the old kettle warming beside him. He had walked away from war, from death, from everything that made his heart beat sharper than a blade's edge. Now he only served tea and silence. But then came the sound. The encrypted file blinked once on the terminal embedded in the wooden wall behind him, an obsolete human model. It should have ignored non-commercial pings. Should have rejected alien frequencies. Yet the broadcast slipped through. Screams. Shouting in Zalari dialect. Garbled noise. Then, Elena Tanaka. Human nurse. Accused of species disruption. Subject in violation of Sovereign Clinical Code, line 42. His wife's name. Her voice. A gasp. A grunt. Then silence. Kenji stood without realizing it. The tea overflowed its cup, steam curling like a phantom toward the ceiling. A single droplet sizzled on the floor. He didn't move to clean it. He just listened. Then the scream returned, this time human, and unmistakably hers. He moved. 3 fractured ribs, 1 orbital rupture, possible brain trauma. She resisted arrest, said the Zalari broadcast, which now played on a loop across subsector forums. The Terran subject intervened during an authorized youth culling procedure. She disabled 2 of our guards with a sedative patch. Highly inappropriate. The screen flickered, then showed her, Elena, crumpled in a corner of a clinical cell. Her uniform torn. Blood traced along her temple, soaking into her collar. A boot struck her ribs as she coughed out the word. Kenji. They didn't know what that name meant. To them, it was a weakness. To him, it was a death sentence. He shut the screen off. He'd promised her peace. He had meant it. He had tried. Gods, how he had tried. But violence was a language the galaxy had never stopped speaking. Kenji packed in silence. Not weapons. Not armor. Only what mattered. A chameleon suit, stained from the last war, still reactive to light distortion. A data blade encoded with every known frequency of the Zalari defense network. A single needle. Tipped with neurotoxin. Never used. Gifted to him by Elena the day he renounced the Silent Edge program. One last choice, she'd said. Only when everything else fails. His fingers brushed the edge of the photo in his pocket, her smile beneath the twin suns of Tertius Prime, laughing as they watched children play in artificial sand. He closed his eyes. The past wasn't dead. It had just been waiting. Somewhere, within the spires of the Zalari Ascendant facility, High Warden Vexal reviewed the report again. The human responded emotionally. Predictable. Her neuroresistance is unusually high, murmured his assistant, an Archon analyst with twitching facial tendrils. Pain thresholds exceed our projections. Vexal narrowed his golden slits. Humans adapt through trauma. It's how they survived extinction multiple times on their own planet. They're not special. Just persistent. Should we notify the Terran Alliance? Not yet. Their bureaucracy is glacial. They'll protest politely, file inquiries, and forget by next cycle. No one cares about a single human nurse. He didn't see the error until it was too late. As the orbital shuttle sliced through the outer layers of the Zalari defense grid, it registered as nothing more than a defunct mining transport. Its pilot was a phantom to all sensors. Breathing slowed to a calculated rhythm, heartbeat masked beneath false telemetry pulses, Kenji became the craft. He whispered to himself. Not out of fear. Out of discipline. Elena is alive until I confirm otherwise. There is no rage. Only the mission. His hand trembled once. Then stilled. Old reflexes surged beneath his skin like electricity reawakening a dormant circuit. There was no time for grief. Only precision. Elena woke in darkness. Her face throbbed. Breathing came in shallow rasps. The cell was damp, Strange, for a medical facility. She wasn't supposed to be here. Not for treating a child. Not for doing her job. They'd killed the boy. Just a small Zalari hybrid, barely old enough to walk, yet deemed genetically unstable by their purity laws. She had protested. Shielded him with her body. And they had responded with protocol. Elena smiled bitterly. She wasn't afraid of pain. What terrified her was what Kenji might do if he found out. They wouldn't survive him. Not one of them. And that's what made her heart ache more than her wounds. The facility's internal network pulsed once, barely noticeable. A harmless diagnostic check. Except it wasn't. It was the first whisper of something ancient reawakening. A protocol Earth itself had buried after the war, Ghost Entry Delta Zero. Only one person had ever executed it flawlessly. And he was coming. The first body didn't fall. It folded. 1 second, the Zalari sentry was patrolling the plasma corridor near Detainment Bay 3. The next, his knees buckled as a pressure point behind his neck collapsed, his weapon clattering to the floor in silence. No alarm. No warning. No trace. Kenji's breath fogged briefly on the chilled titanium wall. He exhaled slow, then vanished down the corridor. The infiltration was almost surgical. Yet it wasn't rage that moved him. It was discipline. And love. He mapped the base layout in his mind, old designs cross-referenced with the emergency power fluctuations from the facility's energy coils. Zalari redundancy protocols would keep backup systems isolated. That gave him a 5-minute window per sector. No more. He didn't need more. High Warden Vexal's eyes narrowed as the security feed glitched again. "What is this?" he snapped, slapping his clawed fingers against the haptic panel. "Third time in an hour." "The distortion appears organic, Warden," replied Viren, the facility's chief xenoneurologist. His voice lacked emotion, but his secondary eye ridge twitched. "Not mechanical. Possibly intentional interference? By whom?" Viren hesitated. "There are only 2 humans in this facility, and one is in custody." Vexal turned slowly. "You're certain?" Viren didn't answer. Something coiled in his gut. He'd heard the rumors. Tales of what Terran operatives had done during the siege of Caltrax. Of Shadowwalkers. Of one in particular. A ghost. He thought they were legends. Kenji slipped into the medical archive chamber, his suit adjusting instantly to the ambient light. He crouched beside a diagnostic hub and inserted the data blade. The stream of encrypted files unfolded like a scroll of horrors. Genetic trauma response testing. Psychosomatic pain amplification studies. Sleep deprivation data spanning over 90 subjects, most of them Terran hybrids, all listed as exhausted material. His stomach turned. Then he saw her name, Tanaka Elena. Status, active. Subject exhibits high resistance to corticoneural stressors. Viable for long-term observation. Anger wasn't what he felt. It was purpose. Cold. Sharp. Unyielding. He copied the files. Then wiped the backups. Let the galaxy see what the Zalari called science. Elena stirred in her cell. Her vision flickered, edges of her sight blurring with pain. Every movement ached, but she forced herself upright. She wasn't alone anymore. Something had shifted. The atmosphere, the way the guards spoke in hushed tones. The faint scent of ozone in the air, like charged silence after lightning. The station felt watched. She whispered into the air. "You came, didn't you?" Her fingers curled weakly around the torn fabric at her waist. A patch was missing. The one she had stitched with the words "Home is a promise." He would have seen it. And that meant she still mattered. Viren stood outside the detention wing, staring at the access log. It had just vanished. Erased from the mainframe, like that section of the base no longer existed. He turned to the nearby drone officer. "Authorize me into the detainee's cell. Now. Orders are to secure all medical staff." Viren cut him off. "If that woman dies tonight, This entire empire may collapse by morning. Let me in. The guard hesitated. Then scanned his ident ring. The door hissed open. Elena looked up, dazed, blood crusted along her cheek. Viren approached slowly, then knelt beside her. I'm here to help. She blinked at him. Why? I've studied over 100 species. Only yours cries for others. He injected a stabilizer into her arm. We may not deserve what's coming, he muttered. But I won't die knowing I did nothing. Kenji didn't kill unless he had to. But sometimes, silence demanded a price. 3 guards fell in the elevator shaft, non-lethal, but they wouldn't walk for months. In the genetic lab, he released the stasis pods. Dozens of children, Terran, Zari, even a few Zalari defectives, stumbled free. He herded them into a utility shaft and keyed in the override code for the emergency pod bay. He knelt before a Terran girl missing half an arm. Stay together, he whispered. No sound. No lights. When the hatch opens, you run. The girl nodded. He watched them go, then turned toward the detention wing. Only one soul left to save. Alarms erupted as soon as he stepped into the primary corridor. Spotlights flared. Automated drones dropped from recessed slots in the ceiling, weapons primed. Kenji exhaled. They wanted loud? Fine. He surged forward, dodging the first stun burst, vaulting off the wall. His suit shimmered with energy as it absorbed a pulse round. He spun, launching a flash round into the nearest drone cluster. They exploded in a spray of heat and metal. Screams followed. He didn't hear them. He heard only her voice, faint, saying his name through broken breath. That was the sound that fueled every motion now. Viren nearly dropped the syringe as the blast trembled the floor. He's already here, he breathed. Elena tried to stand. He's not going to stop. No, Viren said. He isn't. They turned as the wall behind them shimmered, then dissolved. Kenji stepped through the breach, suit dimming, mask retracting. His eyes found hers. No words. Just breath. Just silence. Elena leaned into him. I'm okay, she murmured, though she clearly wasn't. He touched her cheek. I'm sorry it took this long. Viren stepped back, stunned. You're real. Kenji didn't look at him. I've disabled the secondary lab. The children are gone. We need an exit. I can help, Viren said. But the gate only stays open for 90 seconds. Then don't miss. As they prepared to move, Elena tugged Kenji's sleeve. There's something you need to see, she whispered. She handed him a data vial. He scanned it. And froze. What is this? Proof, she said. That the Zalari have been doing this to Terrans for decades, under Council protection. Kenji's grip tightened. This wasn't just a rescue. It was now a reckoning. The escape route was crumbling, literally. Chunks of ceiling crashed down behind them as red emergency strobes cast the corridor in pulses of blood-colored light. Kenji moved like a whisper through the chaos, Elena cradled in one arm, his free hand guiding Viren forward. Sirens howled. Bulkheads slammed shut one by one, narrowing their path. They're initiating station lockdown. Viren shouted over the alarms. Fail-safe protocol. Any unauthorized exit will be vaporized. Then we don't give them time to finish it, Kenji replied, his voice like tempered steel. He didn't slow. His eyes locked on the faint green glimmer at the corridor's end, the emergency gate bay. If they reached it, they could jump systems. If they didn't, they'd die in a steel tomb. And Kenji wasn't ready to die. Not yet. Not when the galaxy had just started to listen. 3 minutes earlier, inside the central control spire, Warden Vexal pounded a clawed fist onto the console. Where are they? Sector 7, replied a security node, its voice trembling with digital distortion. But sir, we can't access the cameras. The system's being overwritten. By who? Unknown. The code fragment bears a Terran signature. Vexal froze. The nurse was never the threat. He turned to his tactician. Prepare the Obsidian Protocol. I want drones deployed in every corridor. Track thermal residues. Anything that breathes, bleeds, or blinks, terminate it. But Warden, that could trigger a diplomatic. Do it. He narrowed his eyes. They thought we wouldn't touch them. They were wrong. Kenji reached the gate room with 20 seconds to spare. The chamber was empty, save for a circular portal pulsing with unstable energy. A breach gate. Barely calibrated. The Zalari hadn't finished testing it, but it would be enough to punch through to neutral space. He set Elena down gently. Her breath was ragged, her eyes fogged with exhaustion. You'll go through with Viren, he said. What about you? She whispered. There's something I still need to do. No. She grabbed his wrist weakly. We got the data. We exposed them. You're done. Kenji knelt beside her. Elena, if I leave now, this will happen again. To someone else. To some child with no ninja husband. To someone who won't survive. Her fingers tightened around his. You promise? I did, he said softly. But I also promised I'd make sure they never hurt anyone like this again. Viren stepped forward. The portal sinks in 90 seconds. If you're not through by then. I won't be. Kenji rose. Calm. Certain. He handed Elena his old pendant, a polished obsidian shard. For when they ask who lit the match, she didn't cry. She just nodded. And let go. Kenji disappeared into the shadows just as the blast doors slid shut behind him. He knew the path now. Every access vent, every exposed relay, every shortcut that wasn't on official schematics. The blueprint of the facility was burned into his mind like an old scar. But this time, he wasn't sneaking out. He was going in. Straight into the command core. The control center descended into chaos as systems failed one by one. Light panels flickered. Navigation displays sputtered. Then the floor hatch opened. Vexal spun, just in time to see the Terran rise from the smoke, his face unmasked, his gaze like knives forged in silence. You! Vexal hissed. Kenji didn't respond. He moved forward, silent as dusk. The guards fired, pulse rounds slammed into energy shielding. Sparks rained. Kenji dove into a roll, twisted between two drones, and drove an electrified baton into one's cranial unit. The other he took apart with 3 blows and a precise strike to the power core. The room fell still. Your species, Vexal said, stepping back, is broken. You love too hard. You rage too fast. You never adapt to order. Kenji tilted his head. That's why we survive. With a flick of his wrist, he tossed the data crystal onto the central console. Transmission unlocked? Said the AI. Now uploading to Galactic Council Broadcast Relay. Vexal lunged. Kenji met him halfway. The fight wasn't cinematic, it was brutal. Efficient. Vexal towered over him, armored and monstrous. But Kenji slipped past his strikes with surgical precision, every movement honed through years of war and withdrawal. He landed blow after blow, targeting joints, nerves, ligaments. Until Vexal fell, roaring, broken. The feed finished transmitting. Kenji turned to leave. Then paused. The warden spat blood. Even now you think you've won? The council will bury this. Your wife will be a footnote. And you'll be forgotten. Kenji looked over his shoulder. They'll remember. He pressed a single button on his gauntlet. The core reactors began to hum. Viren and Elena emerged from the gate on a diplomatic station orbiting neutral ground. Medical teams rushed forward. Human, Valari, Itran, all united under a single cause now that the truth had been aired. Elena clutched the pendant to her chest. Did he make it? Someone asked. Viren didn't answer. He didn't know. But he felt something shift. As if the entire galaxy had just taken a breath it didn't realize it had been holding. Back in the burning control room, as fire tore through the walls and alarms drowned in flame, a single shadow remained still among the smoke. Not running. Not hiding. Just watching. Until the fire took him. Or so they thought. The Galactic Tribunal chamber was silent, not with boredom, but with held breath. A dozen species sat in curved tiers of obsidian seats, scaled, feathered, silicon-based, cybernetic. Even the usually dismissive Cyric delegation leaned forward, their facial stalks twitching in anticipation. At the center, on a raised dais, stood Elena Tanaka. No longer bruised, but still bearing the invisible weight of what she had survived. In her hand, the obsidian pendant glinted beneath the tribunal lights. She placed it gently beside the data crystal. The holoscreen flared to life. And the galaxy finally saw. Footage unspooled, silent and devastating. Zalari medical staff injecting screaming children. Drones dragging half-conscious patients down blood-slick corridors. Human captives tested, tortured, disposed of. Scientific logs describing emotional resilience breakdowns, as if lives were mere statistical anomalies. Then came the final clip, Kenji Tanaka, battered and bloodied, standing in the control core as it crumbled. He whispered one final phrase before the explosion consumed the room. For the ones who never had someone coming. The feed cut. The silence that followed was volcanic. I'm not here to beg, Elena said, her voice calm but unshakable. I'm not asking for reparations. I'm not asking for war. I came here so none of you can say you didn't know. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates looked away. Others clenched their fists or frills or talons. But all listened. Viren stood behind her. The once proud Zalari doctor now wore no insignia, only truth. His voice was quieter when he spoke, but it carried. I was part of it. I saw. I documented. I rationalized. Until one human made me question what species actually deserved the word civilized. He stepped back, gaze steady. We failed. We deserve the consequences. Elena turned to the central chair, occupied by the Alari Arbiter, a translucent, eight-limbed being whose race had never lost a war but had also never saved a stranger. What will you do? She asked. The Arbiter's voice vibrated in the minds of everyone present. Everything has changed. Back on Earth, people watched the broadcast in real time. In orbiting stations, on backwater colonies, deep in subterranean bunkers, humans stopped what they were doing and listened. The footage ignited revolutions. Zalari allies withdrew support overnight. War crime investigations were launched in 5 systems. Trade networks collapsed. Underground resistance cells bloomed like wildflowers in flame-ravaged fields. The message had spread. Not through violence. Not through armies. Through sacrifice. Weeks passed. Elena never held a funeral. There was no body. But a statue rose in Unity Square, taller than any building, constructed not by Terrans, but by representatives from 7 species. It depicted a figure not holding a weapon, but holding a child. One eye was scarred. One hand was extended, not in threat, but in promise. Beneath it, a single phrase etched in every known language. One stood, so others could run. Elena resumed her work in a neutral clinic orbiting Zal 5, where patients arrived from across the galaxy, many wearing the scars of systems that once called them lesser. She didn't wear a uniform. She wore a scarf Kenji had given her, stitched with a single, now frayed word, home. She worked long hours. Smiled rarely. But her eyes never lost their clarity. One day, while changing a bandage on a Cyric infant, a technician approached her with a calm slate. This came through encrypted diplomatic channels, he said, hesitating. It's strange. No origin signature. Just a 4-second clip. She took it. Press play. Static. Then a shadow. A breath. A voice she knew better than her own. Keep watching the stars, Elle. I'm not done yet. The feed cut. She stared at the screen. Then laughed. For the first time in months she laughed. Somewhere in uncharted space, aboard a vessel without registration, a figure wrapped in carbon-threaded robes moved silently between cryopods filled with rescued children. The stars outside glittered like silent witnesses. A small girl stirred in her sleep. The figure knelt and tucked the blanket higher across her shoulder. Then moved on. He didn't need a name. Just a mission. Because while the galaxy had finally opened its eyes, the shadows still had work left to do.